I think the expectation of the ops leader is shifting. We are no longer the ones who keep the trains running on time or who keep the lights on, but we are the ones who are driving growth and protecting culture, building resilience, and we are remaining this glue.
Thanks for listening to The Handbook. This episode is brought to you by Scoro. And shout out to them for supporting my new project with The Handbook, the Business Maturity Quiz. Here's why this matters. Most service businesses grow without a clear benchmark. You feel busy, maybe even successful, but without something to measure against, you don't actually know if you're set up to scale. That's where the quiz I've designed comes in. In 3 minutes, you'll see where you stand across 5 key pillars: people, process, tech, data, and growth. More importantly, you'll get tailored advice on what to focus on next to level up. Most service businesses, including agencies and consultancies, stall at level 1 or 2. Only 5% ever reach the top, level 5. So where do you think you sit? Find out now at bit.ly/assess-business-maturity. Once again, that's bit.ly/assess-business-maturity. I'll include a link in the episode notes. Now, let's get to the podcast. Hi all, welcome back to The Handbook. This podcast has always been about what it says in the tin, operations. And while my background is in agencies, what's become increasingly clear to me through the conversations I've had on this podcast is this. Regardless of the kind of service business you're in, whether it's an agency, consultancy, architecture firm, accountancy, IT firm, whatever, the challenges are often very similar. We're all selling our time and expertise, and the questions are universal. How do we scale smartly? How do we build better systems? How do we empower our teams? And how do we make work work? And that's exactly why I'm so excited about today's conversation. I first discovered Operations Nation a few years ago when I was starting to think more deeply about how to grow as an operations leader. I didn't know many others in similar roles, and it was before I discovered some other operations communities. At that time, I was beginning to think about an eventual move into consulting. So finding Operations Nation for me was a huge relief and really exciting. It made me feel like I wasn't doing this in isolation and that there were other people out there like me figuring things out and sharing openly. For those of you that don't know, Operations Nation is a really broad and really brilliant community, and it spans all kinds of ops professionals across industries. Earlier this year, they invited me to speak on a panel at one of their events. And I have to say, the warmth, the energy in the room was incredible. Even though we were all headed back to very different businesses, the conversations felt aligned and the sense of support was real. I left feeling super inspired. Well, today's guest is the woman behind that community, Aušrinė Keršanskaitė, co-founder of Operations Nation. She's been one of the leading voices in rethinking what operations can be and how we support, develop, and celebrate the people doing it. Let's get into it. Aušrinė, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Harv. It's such a pleasure to be on your podcast.
Thank you. All of us have such interesting journeys into operations. I wanted to start at the beginning with you. How did you first find yourself moving into operations?
When I was a kid or when I was in high school, I had literally no concrete idea what I wanted to do in life. Which I think is true for a lot of people in operations. We don't know that it exists. We never study for it. And yet we just somehow land there. So I had a very random path in life after high school. I studied Japanese in Lithuania, where I'm from. Then I moved to London after a couple of years, dropped out of Japanese, started studying fine art. And then post uni, when I got my art degree, I probably watched a little bit too much Mad Men. So I was like, I want to go into advertising. Went into a couple of open days, decided this is not for me, explored management consulting, wasn't for me either. And then again, very randomly, I found this job ad for a company called Songkick, which was about 10 years ago, the darling startup kind of kicking off the London tech scene. Did an internship for a couple of years and decided that I wanted to stay in startups because it was very much my vibe. But at the same time, I thought I only had this weird fine arts degree that nobody will want me to hire me with it. So I needed a proper degree. went to Imperial College Business School to study masters in innovation, entrepreneurship, and management. Anyway, I was really embedding myself in the startup scene back then. And close to the end of my studies, met these two founders of a very early seed stage startup. And one of them, he was like, "Do you want to come and work with us to help us get this thing off the ground?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, sure. So it was really weird because I had no title. There was no job description. I was just there as one of the first 4 members of the team. The other 3 were engineers, and I was literally there doing everything else but, which, as we now know, is literally the job description of any operations person. And
Exactly.
and then a couple of months in, Ritas, the co-founder, he sat me down and he was like, "How about we formalize this, give you a proper job title?" He was like, "How about we call you operations executive?" He explained that it's keeping the trains running on time and it's keeping the lights on, and that was pretty much it. That was my first operations role, and I stayed there for 5 years, grew into operations director pretty quickly, and I guess eventually realized that this is where I'm gonna stay.
Super, super interesting. What resonated with me is that feeling you said where we didn't know this was even a path. I sometimes think about my own skill set, how I saw myself for my own career, like anything from 10, 15, or maybe even less than that is often looking at my skills, thinking I'm good at getting stuff done and I'm good at ticking things off a to-do list, but what is that? Underselling it because I didn't really value that because it comes so naturally to me. And it was only slowly seeing the impact of those skills, which took a long time for me to really value, that I started recognizing that not everyone is really good at organizing and getting shit done.
I completely agree. And I think there's another thing, which is a frustration that I had since I was a very small kid with people who do things inefficiently. And I just really want to just help a little.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Step in and sort it out. So I feel like operations has started to get more exposure and appreciation in the past few years. Maybe I'm discovering more communities and more people talking about it, or it genuinely is getting more recognition in businesses and that kind of thing. And of course, you've played a part in that as well. But when you first moved into ops, how were you feeling about the function at the time?
When I started out in operations, which was now over a decade ago, like I said, I didn't know what it was. Even if I did a master's in business, and entrepreneurship was one of the things that I literally studied at university for a year. Nobody really mentioned operations, not even supply chains. So that was crazy. And I really want to go back to universities and see how they teach operations, if they do these days as well. Um, and I think what my then boss said about operations keeping all the trains running all the time, it was a helpful outcome to aim for, but I think it was just a small fraction of what we do as operations leaders. So I would just, make things up as I go. And it was really strange those first 5 years. Not now many years ago, there was no playbook. I didn't really have any mentorship. All that I could hear from my colleagues and from my boss and from the founders is, "You're doing great, keep it up." And I was like, okay, cool. But how can I do better? How can I develop myself? And, back then, if you Googled operations, the article that would come up, I think it was a Harvard Business School article about the 7 archetypes of the COO. And that was pretty much it. But I was fairly early in my career, and that was quite a long reach. And I was looking at that article and almost thinking, well, I will never get there. This is not relevant right now. So, one of the things that I hear from our community that I related to early and also later in my career is that showing value as an operations team is incredibly difficult because other teams have very clear outputs. So you have, product that is shipping features, you have marketing that is sending campaigns and getting customer attention, you have sales that are signing clients, and then you have operations that are supporting everyone, keeping things moving, and we get noticed when something goes wrong, which is really demoralizing. So really struggled finding that voice for myself as an operations leader and for my operations team, which I needed to advocate for, just to, come to the front during all hands and be like, "Hey, so this is what we have done this week. Answered however many customer support emails. What does that matter?
Yep.
How do you measure impact commercially?" So that was really, really tough. And I think now maybe we have a little bit more, a few more ways to show our value, but I think it's still a long way to go.
That probably resonates with a lot of people listening. So, Aušrinė, for those that are unfamiliar, why and how did you co-found Operations Nation?
So the original idea was basically from the feeling that myself and my co-founders and so many other people have when it comes to operations. We know that operations is the center of any business, any organization. We keep everything moving, and yet we don't really have a home where we can vent to each other for one and have some professional therapy, or I guess like a peer therapy.
Peer therapy.
Yeah, with each other, and also ask each other questions, help solve each other's challenges, and really assist each other to thrive in our operations roles. With Operations Nation, we want to be that place where operations leaders come to really help each other thrive, but we have a little bit of a secondary mission to shine a light on operations discipline as a whole externally for the ecosystem, so that other folks, founders and CEOs and VCs understand exactly how important it is for their organizations to thrive, not only survive.
That is such a good mission. That's fantastic. So my question is the community for a certain operations professional? Like, I know a lot of us get really into this. What's the word I'm looking for? Hyper specific spaces. We tend to look for communities that are super specific. I have to talk to other agency operations people, or ops for consultancies, or ops for SaaS, or ops for e-commerce and that stuff. What's Operations Nation's take on that?
We have folks from, really, really wide range, from a wide range of industries and business models. And I think none of those things really matter. I think what really matters is that as an operations leader, you want to connect and learn via the community. This is not a passive learning where you sit at a desk and the information is fed into you. And more than an industry or business model, I think what matters is that your organization and yourself as an operations leader is forward thinking and tech enabled, which back in the day used to mean startups and scalers, but now it's every other business because you won't survive in another way. And yeah, I think there is definitely a benefit and space for the specific kind of ops, because there are a lot of nuances in every single industry. And in Operations Nation, we enable that closeness of people who are, very similar or have a specific. So, for example, we have chapters for tech COOs who are based in London. We have other geographical chapters. I think geography matters quite a lot in certain parts of operations. One of our community members is just setting up On Purpose, which is a chapter for nonprofit and social good. But ultimately, the underlying principles and underlying challenges are quite universal and common to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're an agency, a nonprofit, a startup. So how do you scale without burning out? How do you get recognized as a strategic leader and not just a fixer, which is the way that a lot of people see us? And also, how do you use the tools and data, processes, and systems to really empower your team?
I absolutely agree. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I dropped the word agency from the title of this podcast, which some longtime listeners may have noticed or not noticed. It was called the Handbook, the Agency Operations Podcast, and now it's just the Handbook, the Operations Podcast. And it was called agency because that was my background. That's where I had come from, right? But the reality was acknowledging that literally like every challenge that we were speaking about on the podcast was for any kind of professional services firm, and potentially even beyond that, right? These are operational challenges around people, process, tech, data, growth strategies, and that is relevant to any kind of business. So why don't we talk about some of the work that Operations Nation does? I'm sure there's a load of things, but give us some of the highlights of kind of benefits of being a member or just general initiatives that you do over the course of the year.
Yes, and you don't have to be a member to be a part of Operations Nation. You can follow us, or you can join a little bit more intense membership, which is a community membership where you get a lot more out of. So what we really focus on is connection and learning. And these are the two things that we always had at the heart of Operations Nation. And what we also want to make sure of since the beginning is that we co-create with the community. So we don't, as co-founders and as the team, we don't want to build something for the community. We want to build together with the community because, we only know so much. We're
Mm-hmm.
only that smart operations leaders, and there's a whole community that have amazing, beautiful voices to share that we really want to amplify. So our backbone really is the Slack channel, so the discussion forum online where people come to share their challenges, ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
debate about tools and other things, and really support each other. And also, that's something that I really wish that I had earlier in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And we have built the entire ecosystem around the community. So we run a ton of events, online and offline, small and big, both community led and led by our team and partners. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a really good mix. We run a COO course, usually 2 or 3 times a year for aspiring and first time COOs. We co-write COO survival guide together with the community. So it's kind of like a chapter by chapter. There are 5 chapters complete, many more still to go.
Amazing.
Um, then we do annual compensation survey, mentorship program. We've got a jobs board on Slack for now,
Mm-hmm.
newsletter. We also collaborate with partners for more content and fresh perspectives and offers for the community. So it's not just one thing. And what is the most important for us is that we want to make sure that operations leaders have the place to connect, to grow, and to get the recognition that they deserve.
That's amazing. I'm a member of the community and in the Slack, what do you call it? Slack space as well. And I do have to say that is super valuable. Often at kind of operations events in the calendar, there might be few and far between, and then you kind of lose that ability to have those fluid conversations. So just having a bunch of peers on standby, so to speak, in Slack that you can post a question, get some responses is super great. So I remember hearing about the launch of the COO course a couple of years ago, I think it was, and that was super exciting to me. I know one of my ops director friends is in the program at the moment, so that's
Awesome.
super cool. What inspired you to create it, and who is it designed for?
Yes. So it was actually the brainchild of my co-founder, Charlene.
Hmm. Hmm.
And honestly, we talked about what else could we be doing for operations leaders because we had the discussion forum, we had events, and we started talking about the conference. And then COO course came up as this thing that would really teach people who are stepping into operations leadership roles to give them some sort of playbook because we've seen that folks are a little confused how to really succeed. I think what really struck us the most is that a lot of people felt like imposters, really questioning themselves and what they should already know. And if you're a CEO, you're never going to know everything. It is just down to you having like the right tentacles reaching the right information at the right time. Yeah, Charlene sat down and designed an incredible curriculum for the course. And what the way that it's run is we tap into our community and amazing, amazing speakers who deliver the course over 14 weeks. We are forever grateful for them as well. And hopefully we're going to be able to reward them in the near future in a different way too. Um, but to your question, who is it for? It is for aspiring operations leaders and for those who are in the COO seat for the first time. Although to
Hmm.
be honest, we had a couple of leaders who have been in the COO seats already quite a few times when they started the course, and it has been equally valuable for them.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter, again, like whether you're a nonprofit or agency or a startup.
Hmm.
We're going to be covering the core COO competencies that any
Hmm.
operations leader should have. So anything from strategy to organizational design to risk management, to self-awareness, and all these skills are super important for everyone who is going on that journey, regardless of the title. I think COO is just one title that you might be called in your life cycle as operations leader. Could be head of ops,
Yeah.
could be director of operations.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I've started hearing about a couple of places that have some kinds of operations kind of training now, which wasn't the case many years ago, but yours was one of the first. Really quickly, are you able to share what the pricing is for that?
And so £16.99 for 14-week course, and
Hmm.
you're going to be in a cohort with probably 19 other COOs.
And is it online or in person?
So right now we are running it online because
Okay.
we do have folks who are attending from the rest of Europe,
Makes sense.
US, Africa.
Yeah.
But we also try to get together in person as much as we can. So I think graduation celebration parties in a London
Okay.
pubs, if
Yeah.
whoever can make it.
Excellent. I mean, that pricing is super fair as well for a 14-week course, for the kind of confidence that gives you and just kind of that really well-rounded view, especially if you can put it through as a workplace expense or something like that. I think that might be a good shout.
Yeah.
You also mentioned something briefly there about conference. So I know that's coming up in October this year. We've been running ads on the podcast about it. Tell us a bit about that. What are you excited to explore at conference this year?
I'm super excited about our topic, which is resilience, which I was chuckling, like me and my team were chuckling about when we saw Sifted announcing resilience as a topic as well, which made us feel very, what is the word?
On the ball.
On the ball. Yeah, exactly. Because it's very timely, very universal. Everyone is talking about resilience for obvious reasons, I guess. And whenever we organize a conference, we always talk about whatever topic we choose. From three prisms. So one is personal resilience. So how do you show up as operations leader, and how do you sustain yourself in this really demanding role? Then the second one is organizational resilience. So, as an operations leader or as an organization, how do you build sustainable systems and teams in very, very uncertain times? And then the third one, which is very interesting, is ecosystem resilience, which is how can we create organizations that thrive even in unpredictable environments. And this is where we really want to pull in the opinions of the founders and VCs and the rest of the ecosystem. And this is our fifth year when we're running the conference, and it's a 2-day event. And even as it's grown, it is still community powered.
Hmm.
We are going to be running so many roundtables and workshops and hearing talks by the community members, whether they have been with us on the journey for the last 5-7 years, or whether they have just joined in the last couple of months. People come for content, but they leave with a mix of tools, with a mix of solutions, and most importantly, connections. So we really value connection because we're a community, and this is still the thing that I'm most excited about.
Amazing. That sounds really, really good. We'll put a link to conference tickets page in the episode notes, and there is a voucher code as well. You can use the word SCORO for a discount on your conference ticket. So please do check that out and see if you can make it. So, Aušrinė, I'm just going to shift gears a bit from Operations Nation to talking about operations more generally, and really keen to get your point of view. First of all, what trends or shifts are you seeing in operations more broadly, whether it's around tooling, expectations, or team structures, anything like that?
Yeah, it's all about AI to the point where operations leaders are being pushed by their CEOs, founders, and leadership teams to, just fire the support team and replace it with some AI. And we've
Yeah.
seen this come up in a couple of dinner conversations as well. And I think, what is really crazy is that Ops was finally started to be recognized as strategic, and we have never been sexy, but like on the cusp, like on the way to being valued properly. Now AI came in, and now everybody's like, well, AI is going to replace ops. So I think this is very interesting because it's a massive misunderstanding for what operations is. Like, it's not about the tools or the processes only, it's about operations being the glue of the organization.
Hmm.
And it will be very interesting to see how it plays out. And for sure, AI will play a huge role. But I think for operations leaders, the reason why it's important is that now we can finally use something to our advantage to scale our impacts, to free ourselves from all that repetitive admin from the back
Absolutely.
office,
Yeah.
and to spend more time on strategy, on influence, and on the leadership as well.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I think the expectation of the ops leader is shifting. We are no longer the ones who keep the trains running on time or who keep the lights on, but we are the ones who are driving growth and protecting culture, building resilience, and we're remaining this glue, maybe in a slightly
Absolutely.
different way.
Totally, totally. Really helping the businesses scale and succeed. So you've worked across a lot of startups and scale up environments. What do you think a lot of our listeners are from the professional services space, agencies and consultancies? Does any advice come to mind that you think ops leaders in these kinds of businesses could learn from the startup or scale up environments?
Mhm. What I really love about startups, especially early stages, is the speed and scrappiness, and
Mm,
is the building the plane whilst you're already flying it. Um, and yeah, I guess like there are a couple of things. So first is bias for action. So test, learn, iterate. You're never gonna have the luxury of having perfect information. So just get on with it. Just do it, and
mm-hmm,
then you can adopt this agility character in your organization and move a lot quicker
mm-hmm,
without spending too much time on anything. The second one is tooling and automation. So, tech startups, we're a fan of tools, give us the new shiny tool and we're going to test it out and see how we can, take advantage of it. So I would just lean in all the new technology that is coming out
mm-hmm.
and, rethink about how you onboard your clients or manage workflows or how do you use data to drive decisions. I think this is going to be a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And then embedding operations into strategy a lot earlier. To be honest, I think startups are not really doing great at this. So a little bit of a waving our own flag. But yeah, I think it's a lot of companies bring ops way too late when the chaos
Definitely.
has already started. And that's just my best advice. Yeah.
No, that is really good advice. And I think especially a few years ago, it used to come in way too late. The thing that I'm seeing now is there is a little bit more cluing into the fact that this kind of role can enable scaling faster if you have strong foundations in place. So, from your point of view, what does a brilliant ops leader look like now? What are the skills or traits that feel non-negotiable to you?
So I think the brilliant operations leader this year and in the years to come is not the person who does everything
Mm,
and the person who enables everything. So shifting from execution to influence and from being that firefighter and fixer to empowering others
mm,
to do their jobs better. Skill set wise, I think resilience for sure, which we're talking about in our conference, adaptability, being able to join the dots across. So zooming out and really seeing the organization for what it is
mhm,
and firing themselves as they go, becoming less essential
mm,
themselves by empowering everyone else. Strategic thinking and also
absolutely.
fluency with the AI and tooling. That's
Definitely.
a given.
I've had a few guests on the podcast that have emphasized the fact that we need to look at ourselves as strategic roles rather than tactical, right? The role is so much more important than that.
Yeah.
Aušrinė, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast after, knowing you and Operations Nation for years. So, can you tell us really quickly if people want to reach out to Operations Nation and or yourself, where they can find you?
Always on LinkedIn. Hello@operationsnation.com. But yes, Hart, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to have you as our community member. It's an honor to be on your podcast. And honestly, I've been listening to your podcast for many, many months now. And I can say that whether it's agency ops or any other ops, it's so relevant for anyone in operations. So looking forward to spreading the word about the handbook as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aušrinė. Hey all, even though I've known about Operations Nation for years, getting to hear Aušrinė's journey and the thinking behind the community she's helped build was such a privilege. There's a few things that stuck out to me. That feeling so many of us have at the start of our careers of being good at getting stuff done, but not realizing that's a superpower and a career path. The frustration with inefficiency and that urge to step in and sort things out. And of course, the loneliness that can come with working in operations, especially in businesses where you're a team of one. Operations Nation, like the handbook, was built to solve that, to give ops leaders a place to be seen, supported, and challenged. Reminder that conference is taking place in October 2025 in London. And if you follow the link in the episode notes, you can use the code SCORO for £30 off your tickets. Now, if you're a new listener, perhaps from the Operations Nation community listening to this episode, please share this podcast with someone else that would enjoy it. Join the conversation when you see Aušrinė or I posting about it on LinkedIn. And of course, sign up for the Handbook newsletter where I send a cheat sheet with the key takeaways from every episode straight to your inbox. The link to that is in the episode notes as well. That's it for me this week. Thanks very much for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Scoro, a platform designed for agencies and consultancies, which allows you to manage your projects, finances, and resources, all from one system. This is a platform I brought in at a previous workplace, which completely transformed the way we worked, and which I've recommended to clients of my own. You can sign up for a free trial on Scoro.com. That's SCORO.com. Or reach out to me, Harv, on LinkedIn if you'd like to hear about some of my experiences.